Let's go to the next one. Next concept. Already I introduced those terminologies like your publisher or your consumer. This is how a API life cycle look like, right? So you know how a software life cycle uh, looks like, right? So or you are aware of how a testing life cycle looks like, right? So different phases. Suppose you want to build an API, right? So how the API life cycle will look like? Again, this is a important topic from an interview point of view. So you need to understand all these concepts. So first thing is the publisher, right? Publisher means here who is responsible for creating the API. If you are using Twitter APIs, right? So obviously the company Twitter is responsible for making their APIs and make it available for the consumer world, right? Or you are building any product, so you are responsible for creating the APIs, but you are not consuming it, you are just creating it. Okay, so first step will be like similar as a software development life cycle. You need to plan it, you need to strategize it, and then it will go in similar way like you create it, you design it, okay, you implement and build it, you test it, and you publish it. Okay, so only difference here is like maybe your design principles, how you design your APIs will be different than how you design your UI, right? So your architecture might be different, but all other things remain same. Like you have to use your best practices to create your APIs. You have to test it thoroughly, and then when it is ready, you have to publish it. Now the important thing is here is the most important thing is here is the publish, because once you publish it, somebody has to consume it, right? So how a person will consume it? Now if you're creating an API, think like you may create the API for internal consumption or external consumption, right? So for Twitter, right? So Twitter is a very big application. They may have a lot of internal APIs, right? So which will facilitate the Twitter functionalities. Okay, so you may have two kind of APIs, one for your internal users, one for your external users, right? And both you have to publish so that anyone wants to use your APIs, they can actually try it before using, right? So suppose I'll give you again a very simple example. Okay, you created an API to create users, right? Twitter has facility to create profiles. Now for creating profiles, right, so you may have subtask there, right? So how you will create a profile, right? So there will be different fields like your first name, last name, email, all those mandatory fields, right? And then probably if it is a if it is a buying or selling kind of applications, you want to get your uh, functional financial related things, right? So you may need to ask credit card informations, all those informations, right, in the API you will be providing. And based on the functional requirements, you may need to perform some actions or business rules, right? So which your backend will take care. And once user gives the information, and you responsibility has to be you have to securely save that information in database. Obviously database plays a major role here. So you give the information, and if you are giving credit card related information, that has to go securely. And even your user information like username, password and all should go securely, right? And then You said, yeah, my API is tested, it is ready, and anyone who wants to test it, use it, they can use. Now, suppose you are a tester in that company, right? So, to test this user creation API, right? So, what exactly you need? First thing you need the specification, right? So, what exactly that API is doing? What are the parameters, right? What are the parameters you have to pass? Each parameters might be having some data types, right? For example, phone number, it's numeric, right? Email address, you should validate the email address, right? So we'll go through deeper again in this, but in a high level, you know, when you want to consume a API or test an API, you need all those details. Okay, so if you see here in the last part, consumer part, I have given something called developer portal. Okay, you need to understand this part uh, because this is one of the important topic actually, how generally APIs are getting published. So once no somebody publish the APIs, to consume it or to test it, right, you can actually test it from the developer portal. Okay, where it will list the APIs, it will list I'll show you an example also today how a developer portal looks like, and what kind of parameters you need to pass, you know, even if you want to try it, right? So how you can try it from most of these, you know, Twitter, Facebook developer portals, you can log in with using your developer account, you can test the APIs. Okay, so that will facilitate your, you know, how you can test it, how you can use it, and how you can know the APIs better. Now another term, so you know what is a publisher, right? So publisher part we covered. Now we have a consumer part, right? Who will actually consume the APIs, right? So the consume for the consumer, discovery is important, right? Consumer should know that your APIs are available. How as a consumer I know the APIs are available? One is like, you know, developer portal. If you are actually doing internal no internal APIs, you can use internal developer portal, or maybe you can use your internal release, you know, mails, you know, to tell the other teams, right? So suppose two teams are there. One team is actually using building the profile APIs. One team is building the order APIs, right? So order API team should know all the information from the profile team. So basically, the profile API should be discoverable, right? Then only the order team can actually use it. And it is also important to, you know, authorize that, right? So the access management, right, of the APIs. You cannot give access to your APIs to anybody, right? So suppose if it is an internal APIs, the internal people who is working in the team only should get access to the APIs, right? So there are different mechanism, you know, how we can facilitate the access part. I will cover that in the coming sessions. But for time being, just, you know, keep it in your mind, like, you know, API should be, you know, you should be authorized, okay, and to use the APIs. Okay, so if you are authorized, then next thing is like integration part, right? From consumer side, integration is important. Why integration is important? uh, I'm coming back to the Twitter application. So I am building an application based on Twitter APIs, right? So uh, I need to actually integrate my application with the Twitter APIs. So Twitter has to give me access, right? I will purchase the access, and Twitter has to give me all the tokens and all everything needed to access those APIs, and then I will integrate that, you know, APIs in my code. I'll be calling those APIs from my code. So integration is always a consumer responsibility. Okay, and then the developer portal, from where the consumer will actually try out all the, see, before even integrating the Twitter APIs, I want to test it basically, whether it is, fulfilling my requirements or not. Okay. So what I will do, I will go to the developer portal. I'll create my developer account. Okay. And the APIs I'm interested in, I may not be interested in all Twitter APIs, right? So basically I need only few functionality to be available in my application. So I will test only those things. If it is working, then probably I'll go ahead with a paid version. Okay. So I have this, in API lifecycle, I have publisher, I have consumer, right? Now, how publisher and consumer are actually, talking to each other? There should be one, middleman here, right? So that is where the manager come into picture. So you have the APIs, you have, somebody is publishing or building, you have somebody is consuming, but how we can facilitate this publishing and consuming process? That's where the API management come into picture. So which will actually give the all admin related stuff it will do. Maybe the discovery of the APIs, it will facilitate. Then security and monetization. Monetization is important because this is where you will use your APIs to generate revenue, right? So API, suppose you are a consumer, so you should know how much money actually you have to pay to Twitter, right? So maybe per API basis, per hit basis, right? So all those things will be handled by the manager. Then your API no, analytics or your dashboard, where you can see the entire big picture, right? So how many APIs are available, how many APIs people are consuming, how much consumption, right? So a lot of things you need to monitor here. So the API manager will facilitate all this, like all the admin stuff. Okay. Yeah, it is sitting in between your publisher. These are all concepts. Okay, we will see again in real time how all these concepts looks like. But yeah, so in high level API life cycle, you have three concepts basically: the publisher, manager, and consumer. Okay, so each has a unique role to play. Okay, and we need to test all this in our you need to consider all this in our testing strategy. Life cycle is clear.
Yes, Deep.
Yes, Rinki. Yeah.
Okay. So, one more important thing, API. There is a important difference between API and web service. Okay, I want to consider that also here. So you might be hearing those terms, right? So API, web service, and web API, then microservice. Microservice will I'm parking it for time being. But if you see API and web service, right, there is a significant difference here between two. So a web service is always an API, but a API sometimes may not be a web service. When we consider the term web, right? So that means you are accessing the API via network. Okay, so you are calling in the Twitter example. So obviously this is a web service because you'll be calling those API via internet, right? So those APIs are hosted in Twitter servers and you need a internet for that. Suppose you are no you are calling some functionality, right, which is developed in your application, right, which are not APIs but which are maybe normal methods of functions, right? And for your any development purpose or adding new functionality, you need to reuse that code. Okay, in a very simple example, suppose you have a class. Okay, so it is providing functions to add two numbers, divide two numbers, like that, and you can actually use those methods creating an object. So you can consider those as an API, but those are internal, right? So you are not actually calling them via network. So code is accessible to you. So network part is not involved in that case. You those are not web service. So web service means you're calling something via internet using everything will go in using REST APIs, maybe or using a message queue where internet is needed, right? So just remember that also, again, a key interview question.